We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome again to another very special edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. This podcast has been around since 2018, and I hope you've subscribed and enjoyed it over the years as much as we've enjoyed putting them together for you. We pride ourselves in finding interesting people to talk to in the cannabis industry, and we certainly have found one this week. His name is George Jage, and he is the founder of MJ Unpacked, but he's also the founder of MJBiz Con, which
that's actually, I wasn't the founder of that company, but I did run it.
Okay. So you weren't one of the, I was told you were the co-founder of MJBiz Con. Was that inaccurate?
That is inaccurate.
Okay, good. I'm glad that you corrected me, and I really don't mind. Anytime, in fact, over the next few minutes in our conversation, if I do say something wrong, please correct me, because I do want to make sure that everything we share with our audience is the proper information and factual, because media has taken quite a hit over the last 5 or 6 years, let's just say. And I like to at least make sure that what we're responsible for is accurate. So thank you for that correction.
And thank you for your integrity for journalism. That's so important in today's marketplace. And, getting good, solid, reliable information is becoming not a commodity anymore. It's becoming a rarity.
That's right. And it's a shame, but the consumer now, as you know, is in charge of their use of media. They get to pick and choose what they watch, when they watch, how they watch, and what they believe. And it's one of the reasons actually why I started this company, was when I saw an interview with a CEO from a cannabis company. I'm pretty sure it was Joe Lusardi from Massachusetts-based Curaleaf at the time. He was CEO. He was on CNBC, and the reporter grilled him about every myth, stereotype, and stigma. And I could see that it really bothered me, because I was like, first of all, the reporter did not do due diligence, any background on that person. And it seemed to be, he was, I think it was a she actually, was attacking Joe. And I'm like looking at this and I'm saying, I could do a better job with this interview than she could. So
and here you are.
Well, I'm trying anyway. I'm trying. I love to be able to find people out there that are doing good podcasts, good interviews. We were introduced through Josh Kincaid of the Talking Hedge, who happens to be our Washington State correspondent on our weekly news show called We Talk News. But let's get back to the beginnings of MJBiz Con, when you were involved with it and running it, correct?
Yes. So to kind of give you the origin story there, I have been producing trade shows and creating business media assets and owning my own companies prior to coming into the cannabis space. When people ask, when did you get into the space? It's always kind of, what's your level of street cred? Well, I could say that I actually entered the space when I was probably about 15 and had an herbal distribution business in high school. So it's not, I haven't been a stranger to cannabis by any stretch of the imagination. Back in 2012, I had built up a company with my wife, Kim, who's my business partner in the current venture and life partner, called World Tea Media. We produced the largest trade show in the world for tea. We had an online learning platform to teach people to be tea sommeliers. We had a digital news platform. And we actually had a global tea competition called the World Tea Championships, and created a Parker Wines rating system called the World Tea Ratings for tea. So we exited that business back in 2012. Typically, when you exit a trade show, there's an earnout period where there's continuation of management. So I stayed on board through 2014, and a friend of mine actually the friend of a friend called me up and said, "Hey George, I heard you're going to be free. Let's start a pot show." And I'm like, "Huh?" Like, I wasn't really keenly aware of what was happening, in Colorado and some of these other states who were starting to pass ballot initiatives. And he said that we could be partners and I could run it. And I said, "Great, are you going to put up the money?" He says, "I don't have any." So, ideas are cheap. Investments, investment capital tends to be a commodity most of the time. And it really comes down to is execution, right? You need operators that can execute on a business plan. At that time, the guy had a conversation with the owners of then called MMJ Business Daily. They had one full-time employee, Chris Walsh, who's now the CEO of that company. And they had done some very small conferences, one at a Masonic Lodge in 2012. Not that there was a lot of doors opening up for somebody to have a cannabis conference to begin with. And then they did another one up in Seattle at a Emerald Downs racetrack where they had 20 tabletops, out in the foyer outside of a single conference room. So it wasn't really even a trade show at that point. They were in the process of rebranding everything to Cannabis Media, and they felt that, marijuana was starting to have some stigma around it. And so they asked me if I would step in and run that company for them, and I did. I built all the infrastructure, financial systems, and professionalized the event and rebranded everything under the MJBiz brand. Was able to scale that show up very significantly to well over 1,000 booths, and was the one who got them into the Las Vegas Convention Center. I unfortunately had an executive divorce over some contract provisions that the owners and I had some disagreements on that were settled out of court favorably for me, but that's not an admission of guilt. So fast forward is that when I was running that event, and I think this is where I'm super excited about what's happening right now.
Yep.
There was the cannabis industry changes very rapidly, right? And it's every industry grows and goes through certain paradigm shifts. And back in 2014 and 2015, 16, even 17, a lot of new states were coming online, and certainly the Western United States, Colorado, California, Oregon, Arizona, Washington, and people needed to stand up these licenses. They didn't know what cannabis retail looked like on a legal market. They didn't know what a packaged cannabis product necessarily looked like. You had your homemade brownies and you had, the weed you could buy off the street, but it wasn't necessarily a consumer packaged goods that you'd find in a supermarket someday in the future. So the need for the infrastructure, the supply side of the industry was very strong. People needed equipment, they needed software, they needed technology. They needed solutions to set up their operations. They needed capital too, and I think ArcView did a phenomenal job stepping into that space in the very early days. But what happened then, kind of like 2017, 18, we started seeing the rise of the MSOs. We also saw that there was this land grab. We all have to race to the next new market and get a license. And that went on for a couple of years. And then the public market access with the Canadian Stock Exchange, and everybody's like, we can get money from the public markets. And so there was this kind of weird kind of quasi capitalization of the market. You have the bigger players that were able to, really get some substantial financing to be in a position to kind of pot bully the market, so to speak, of acquiring licenses in states. You look at Illinois, it's a handful of big players that are dominating that market. It's not set up very, kind of independent operator friendly. Not to say that it won't become that, but that's where they're at right now. So, but what I always knew when I was running MJBiz Con was that the cannabis industry is a consumer packaged goods industry. And if you look at every single CPG industry, natural products expos, for the natural products industry, consumer electronics, bar and nightclub show, the event needs to be focused around the brands and the retailers. They're the vanguard of our industry. They're the ones winning the consumers. And we've moved away from this land grab. Not that there's not exciting new states coming online and potentially going from medical to rec, or even going straight to recreational in the years to come. But the idea of going out and acquiring a license and spending maybe upwards of $1 million to get that license, and then having to set up an entire different business operation that's going to have to operate independent from wherever state you're operating in, isn't the most efficient application of capital, where brands are starting to realize I can go and partner with another brand or manufacturer in another state, and they can manufacture my product, and maybe I'll manufacture theirs. And I can start building a national footprint instead of through, license acquisition, but through license partnerships or license agreements. So long story short, and I know I'm long-winded, like I said at the beginning of the call, you can ask my wife. This is a CPG industry, and we're super excited because this is where we go next. The focus is on brands, and we're going to start seeing the relationship move from the retailer to the brands, and creating that relationship. Just like you go to a bar and order Jack and Coke, you're going to go and get a Wana or a can or some other product. You're going to build your relationship with the brands.
Yeah, interesting. And of course, so you take us to the current day. It was a 10-year anniversary of MJBiz Con, and at the same time, you launched your own event called MJ Unpacked that was actually being run at about the same time. I think you took a day less. Was it 2 days, MJ Unpacked?
Yeah, we did a 2-day event. We're not trying to pack 30,000 people into an event because there's not a return on objectives. Like, how do you figure out who's purposeful to talk to? And we're not trying to drive that relationship building through badge scanning, because that's not really meaningful either. That maybe creates a warm lead at best, and 80% of them are never followed up on. So, what we did is we really focused on how do we deliver value. We don't want to be the premier, the biggest, the most influential, or the most trusted. And I don't know who that's trusted by, but what we want to do is we want to create the most valuable event for a very specific part of the audience that we think is the most important. And that's the brand and the retail executives, and meet the needs of the moment. We know that for a brand to go and exhibit at a national show and have to pay like $6,000 for a booth and probably twice as much more to set that booth up, that's a terrible investment of capital. We can set them up so that they can have a brand showcase at our event. They can put their product on display like it would look in a retail store. And so they can communicate, and they can meet with brands from other states. They can meet with retailers from other states. They can meet with investors. And that's what these brands need, because there's this, tsunami of capital coming in from the farm, most likely from alcohol and tobacco, possibly pharmaceutical or other CPG industries, that has huge bank accounts, huge teams, huge operational efficiencies. And when we nationalize the cannabis and have a federally regulated program, we're going to lose a lot of really amazing companies and a lot of amazing products. And quite frankly, I don't think the cannabis industry should be run by the thought leadership of alcohol or tobacco. We need new leadership that has the origins in cannabis, that can create a much more safe and responsible recreational vice industry, right? And a medical industry.
Well, absolutely. And you mentioned medical, because I always harp on this, and I have a medical card in Massachusetts. That program came in 2013, and people forget that this is truly a medicinal product. It's been used medicinally for thousands of years, while it's been prohibited and stigmatized in this country since the 1930s, 1937 with the Tax Act. And you mentioned the stigma. Anybody in this industry can feel it, if not on a daily basis, on a somewhat regular basis, whether you're trying to do banking or just trying to have an event. Oh, you're in the cannabis space, man, you must be making a lot of money. Well, this is
one of the toughest businesses running a cannabis retail.
Right, exactly. And now I want to ask about the importance, because the MSOs have to kind of give the lift to the beginning of an industry. And I see that happening. And now they're starting to scoop up other little companies. But the necessity of having a strong group of multi-state operators is important to a young industry, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And listen, this isn't like, the small guy versus the big guy, right? I mean, they're both important parts of the ecosystem, right? I mean, you need the shrimp, and you need the krill, and you need the whales to kind of make the ocean kind of, keep on turning, right? And so, for the MSOs, and I'm impressed. There's a lot of pretty responsible stewards that are working inside some of those organizations. Yes, there's some people that are just looking, to monetize it, but I think that universally, or at least mostly, that we see that some of these executives that are representing the industry on CNBC, because the small guys aren't on there, are understand the origins, the legacy, the importance, the medical benefits of this, and how this can really be a transformative industry for the world. You look at the harm, reduction that cannabis can provide both physiologically and socially, compared to alcohol. It's massive. And I do believe that in 10, 15, 20 years from now, we're not going to go out to a bar or nightclub to get wasted and be hungover the next morning. And, we're going to probably go and get high and have a much more elevated experience. You're probably going to put a few bouncers out of work. And people aren't going to be hungover, and they're not going to be destroying their organs as a function of consuming too much alcohol. But going back to, it's been around for thousands of years. So fun fact for your audience and for you, when I was working in the tea industry, everybody knew that tea was allegedly discovered by Emperor Shenyang 5,000 years ago, who was known as the father of modern herbal medicine, and was said to have a translucent stomach. So he would take herbs and different plant medicine and would be able to see the effect it was having on his body. What I didn't know when I left the tea industry and got in the cannabis industry, I'd be working for the same guy, because actually Emperor Shen Yun wrote about using cannabis for medical purposes 5,000 years ago.
Yeah. Now he didn't spell his name Young, does he?
No, it's not at all. It's Nong is the last name. SHENNONG.
That's it. Look, I'm certainly familiar with the Cy Youngs of the world, the Neil Youngs in the music area, but I'm not related to any of them. But I'm proud of my heritage unto itself.
It's more of a descriptor for you. It's, you're kind of a forever young kind of guy.
That's right. I appreciate that. And let me tell you, that's about the only thing that is young in my body. Okay. Because the body is really an old athlete's body and it's broken down. Let's just not go there. Okay.
All right.
But I want to get back to some of the issues in the industry. We talked a little bit about the role of the MSOs. As you know, there's a lot of groups out there led by Steve D'Angelo and the Last Prisoner Project, looking to expunge a lot of the records and get every prisoner who is behind bars out of jail, especially for those that have been incarcerated for possession crimes, for very little possession, if you will. And obviously we have had many more arrests of people of color by law enforcement than we have of the people in white, even though both races use it equally. That being said, the social injustice and the social justice component of this industry is what a lot of people, including Senator Cory Booker out of Jersey, continues to rail about at the federal level. How important is it to you, as you look at this, to give the people that have been most impacted by the failed war on drugs an opportunity to have a piece of the pie, or the piece of the bud in this case?
Yeah, incredibly. And so, this is paramount. And let's just be honest. I mean, it is undisputable that, our cannabis, or at least drug laws in general, have been used for, racist, profiling, racial profiling, targeting communities of color more than white people or Caucasians. And it is also ridiculous that somebody would be in prison for using plant medicine. So let's call it what it is. They're not prisoners, they're hostages. And so we need to make sure that we're fighting to get them released, period. I'm really proud that, and I've always felt that, as a media asset, that we have a responsibility to the industry to lift up those heroes that are doing the work that we all need to support, right? So we did a benefit concert at our first event. Jim Belushi and Dan Aykroyd came out. Thank you guys. We did a phenomenal Blues Brothers concert at the House of Blues. And collectively, between, an auction that we did on our show floor and the concert and some other donations made, we raised over $70,000 for the Last Prisoner Project at the last event. We're going to be doing the same at every one of our events, and it may, we may expand what other groups we can help. So there's two issues here. One is, we need to free the hostages, right? These are our brothers and sisters that are in jail for something that we're allowed to do very legally, whether it's smoke pot, have pot in our person, or even sell pot or grow pot, right? Like, why are they still in jail is ridiculous. It's kind of like, why don't we have safe banking? It's ridiculous. But then the other side of it is the legacy market. And, so maybe they haven't been thrown in jail yet. But, how are we bringing that part of the market forward? I mean, we have people in California that generationally have been growing weed and supplying our entire country. Is estimated to be a $50 billion market before legalization, which made it an unusual industry because it wasn't a new product. It wasn't a new market. It was an existing market moving from the shadows to a taxed and regulated state. I'm not a subject matter expert, but it certainly seems as though the way California kind of addressed some of the legacy, growers and stuff to move forward was, hey, we're not going to ask, don't tell, we're going to amnesty you and grandfather you in, and you can get a license and operate in the legal market. But at the same time, they're saying, but if you don't, we're going to come after you. And the other option of if they do means that they're going to have to all of a sudden pay all these taxes, regulations, fines, everything else. And they're kind of putting a gun to their head saying, either we're going to come after you if you don't go legal, and if you do become legal, we're probably going to bankrupt you because we're going to make it so punitive for you to operate in the legal market with the 280 tax code constantly changing regulations and the tax that we're taking on the product. And then, by the way, we're not going to enforce this against most of the black market in California. I'm sorry, it shouldn't be referred as black market, the illicit market in California.
I like legacy, by the way.
Yeah,
I like the legacy market.
right? Legacy market. And so it's tough. I mean, there's not an easy answer. And like I said, I'm not a subject matter expert. I know that New York is certainly trying to really perfect this. I know Steve is D'Angelo, who is, deserves everybody's admiration and gratitude for the work he's done to advocate for this industry and support the industry by being a founder of ArcView, being a founder of NCIA, being the founder of Last Prisoner Project. And I know he's got some new projects in the work that are also going to be really important for our industry. So, we need to make sure that this has to be inclusive. You can't say cannabis and not have it be inclusive.
Right. Absolutely. One of the top stories on our news show this week will be the video that the candidate for Senate in Louisiana released the other day, where he is, have you seen it? You know exactly what I'm talking about.
No, I haven't. I can't wait to hear about it though.
Oh my God, you have to see it. Gee, I wonder, now I know Dan has this video already queued up for our news show, but I don't think there's any way that we can roll it.
Every 37 seconds, someone is arrested for possession of marijuana. Since 2010, state and local police have arrested an estimated 7.3 million Americans for violating marijuana laws, over half of all drug arrests. Black people are 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana laws than white people. States waste $3.7 billion enforcing marijuana laws every year. Most of the people police are arresting aren't dealers, but rather people with small amounts of pot, just like me. I'm Gary Chambers, and I'm running for the U.S. Senate, and I approve this message.
And it's really the first time that you see a politician, someone who's running for office, smoking on camera and explaining about the injustices that have been part of this world for many, many years. And I will be sharing the video with you after this interview, I promise. It's also
Dan, keep your finger on the censor button, because all I got to say about that is yeah. Listen, the more that we can put this into the mainstream media and really, listen, I'll move down to Louisiana and vote for the guy. And yes, there's some publicity stunt to that and everything else, and it's certainly risque to capture a national media attention. The same way I've watched videos of a guy going in court being sentenced to for marijuana possession, lighting up a joint in front of the judge. So everybody's got we've got to fight and protest in the ways that we can. As somebody who's really loves and is passionate about bringing together people that can be meaningful and be productive and create a return on experience and objectives and investment, doing that type of hero work every day in, day out. I know Mary Bailey and Steve D'Angelo and the whole Last Prisoner Project team are so passionate about that. So how do I lift them up, right? And love working with them. Another thing that we're really proud of what we're doing is we have a partnership with our academy. Hillary Yu out of San Francisco, she created a pre-accelerator for Black-owned or BIPOC-owned businesses and social equity candidates. And what she can do is she can help them, take their idea, their dream. It's called Our Academy, Our Dream. Take their dream, build it into a business plan, build it into a pitch deck so she can raise capital.
Right.
That's very time intensive. And she's, please go to our academy and sign up to be a mentor. If you're in the industry, they could use the help. I
will do that. By the way, I'm a mentor for hundreds of young people in the broadcast business. I'm very proud of that, actually, more than anything else I've ever accomplished in my career, because I believe in giving back. Certainly when you get to be my age, you want to share some of the experiences you've had with others.
Give back where you have an abundance of wealth and you've got an abundance of experience, right? So you can give back that experience. If you sell your company for $120 million, give back $12 million to support the advocacy. And that's not directed at anybody in particular.
By the way, we only need 500,000 for seed money right now. Okay. Just want to throw that out there in this interview. But go ahead. But
the thing I love about our academy is what we can do, and our event is designed to do, is we can put those, future entrepreneurs, those BIPOC-owned business, those social equity applicants We can put them on stage in front of a group of investors and help them get funding. We can put their product on our show floor to create awareness and branding for them. And we can help them, basically, we can kind of light the match to get them the rocket fuel to take off. And, we had a pitch session where all of the graduates of Hillary's cohort, did a presentation. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. There was not a dry eye in the room. I mean, these people deserve the support of our industry, and access to capital is also one of the biggest hindrances to seeing the type of diversity in the cannabis industry, ownership and equity, just as much as anything.
Right. We talked a little bit about the MSOs and the injustices and the opportunities and the challenges of social equity applicants to get capital. Are you starting to see some of these MSOs creating funds or the same kind of incubation?
Absolutely.
So again, what I hear is socially responsible capitalism going on in this industry, which makes me very proud. And I'm guessing you like that too.
Sure, love it. Grow Generation just made a big announcement that they've created a program to help support, minority-owned businesses. Chima from Cresco Labs, came and spoke at our last event and developed this seed program at Cresco Labs. And listen, they're in. They recognize that if they don't do the right things as a leader and steward in this industry, if they just look at this transactionally, if they just look at this from a profit motive, then we're not better than anything that's come before us. And we are better because the product's better.
I love that. Absolutely.
Side of history on this one. We're just not on the right side of the law.
I get that. And I do know that you are coming this way for MJ Unpacked in New York in a few months. Am I right?
Yeah, we're super excited about it. Our event will be in May in New York. You can go to MJUnpacked.com for more information. And again, this is an event that is exclusively for cannabis, CPG, brand, and retail executives that have a title of manager or higher. So over 50% of the people that came to our last event were from the C-suite. They came from all over the country. And it was the first time that there was actually cannabis brands on display in a single event from every adult use market in the United States and retailers from every adult use market in the United States in attendance. And so we want to grow on this, and we'll be going back to Las Vegas in the fall of 2022 as well. We've got a few other projects in the works. Don't want to tip my hand too much. It's a competitive space, the trade show space. It's funny, but we're building this company based on the principle of hospitality and on the principle of serving the industry first and foremost.
Yeah, I'm guessing that the acquisition of MJBiz for 120 million actually helps your cause if you're going out there raising fund. Am I
sure.
right?
Great. It's a great comp. I have a lot more insights than the average person onto all the mechanics of that deal because I've been in the trade show space and been involved with the groups that the large companies that are strategic buyers like Emerald Exhibitions, Clarion, Tarsus, Informa, goes on and on. And trade shows can be very profitable enterprises, but it's how at what point do you just become, too big to be meaningful to people, right? And I think this is also where I believe, and this is not, any shot at MJBiz, but it's just the reality. It's, the industry has changed. People do not need to go and look for light bulbs and label makers at that scale anymore. What they need is to be looking at where are the brands, who's going to be the first national brand. There isn't one until we have a national market, by the way. But who's going to be the first national brand? Is it going to be Wana? Is it going to be, Select? Is it, all these brands out there, Mindy's from Cresco? Is it going to be Old Pal, who owns, by the way, 0 cannabis licenses and is now, I think, in 10 states? They've built an incredible brand because they're not using their capital to go and acquire a license and set up a building. They're going to go to a producer and say, hey, we need you to manufacture. Here's our specs. Here's our packaging. We'll put a sales team out in the field, and they're killing it.
Yeah. And you think that's a model that is a sustainable model and might be more and more replicated as this industry continues to grow?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, if we issue licenses, across the entire spectrum from testing, production, manufacturing, cultivation, retail, and stuff like that in every state. I mean, at some point, when you look at the kind of where the transition points and things, obviously safe banking, we need to get that done so bad, just to normalize interest rates for the independent operator, possibly even open up access to SBA loans and even just bank loans, collateralizable bank loans. from mainstream America, financial industry, it would be so meaningful, but would really help support a lot of the independent operators in the space. But when you look at the MSOs, I mean, there's only a finite number of licenses, and eventually they're going to want to shut down a lot of the upstream supply side licenses and create economies of scale, right? Like the same way, Budweiser, I don't know exactly what states they have in. They probably have a big, bottling facility in Denver, one out on the West Coast, one out, on the East Coast, the Southeast. And so they can create some economies of scale around those. If we federally legalize, we may start, obviously, would open up the opportunities for import and export. And, some countries like Colombia might come online and be able to cultivate a very high quality product that can be imported and manufactured cheaper than product here. You're going to have
it's a nickel. I think it's a nickel a gram in Colombia versus 50 cents and above in the United States.
Right.
So far.
And that's a function of labor costs and cost of land and property, plant, equipment, tax structure, other things that, on an economic level. But there's also going to be this huge demand for the craft side of the industry. And we've seen that shift in consumer behavior, really over the last 15, 20 years. I used to be an assistant brewmaster when I was in college. I've always really enjoyed craft beer, right? Like, I mean, there's only so much Coors Light or Miller you can drink before you're like, this is not too good. Right. Although I do enjoy a nice Rainier once in a while from the Pacific Northwest. But, I'd rather buy that from a local brewery that might be in my region. We talk about farm to table. We talk about, climate change and reducing those transportation costs and commoditization of industry. So, I might want to go pick up a pack of pre-rolls that are very low cost from a convenience store 10 years in the future. But I also might want to go buy some really nice, high quality flower from a grower that's down the road from me, and I know is supporting my local economy. So I think we're going to see a very robust specialty premium market, and we're going to probably see a commoditization of the general market probably down the road, 5 years, 10 years down the road.
I would be remiss if I didn't talk about what's going on the federal side of things right now in this country, and not just in Washington, D.C., but there's an incredible divide. And it really bothers me as a child of the 60s when I protested against a war that I thought was unjust and we never should have been there. And, we pointed the finger at the president who ended up putting out that Controlled Substances Act that we're still fighting to this day to get descheduled cannabis off there. What is going on? They couldn't even get the filibuster to be agreed upon by these two sides, the Republicans and the Democrats. To me, I'm pretty radical about this. I come from the Northeast. I'm from Massachusetts. This is one country, and we are split between two political parties and two distinct different mindsets. And I don't know if we have the leadership in place, or we have leadership even amongst us that can somehow or other fix this. And cannabis is now a political issue, George. Are we, you talked about legalization. I'm not very confident that we're going to see that anytime soon. But do you expect to see any kind of federal cannabis reform during this next Congress?
I like to talk to people that are smarter than me on this. Good friend of mine, Neil Levine. I mean, he's been a policy wonk. Tom Angel and the reporting he does at Marijuana
does a great
Moment.
job. Yep.
Also a friend. You can crystal ball this all the time. I'm an optimist. I want him to legalize tomorrow.
Right.
But you brought up the point. I mean, we have a broken federal government and a dysfunctional country right now, and it's sad. I think that there's, in my humble opinion, there's pretty much two simple fixes. Get rid of Citizens United and set term limits. Right. We need to get corporate interests out of Washington because, it's the Republicans and the Democrats are kind of like, go back and read the Starbelly Sneetches, by Dr. Seuss. I mean, they're constantly flipping sides, and cannabis isn't political because there's an overwhelming support, but that's kind of a good thing and a bad thing, right? If it was political, one side or the other could really rally behind it to get its voter support. And then if they were able to succeed in the federal government and have controlling interests, they'd be able to pass the legislation theoretically. But again, once they get in office, it's like, who's going to write the check at the next, fundraiser dinner to support that?
Right.
There's arguments and criticisms of people that I think are have great intentions, but that are backing bills that will never pass the Senate. And people that will argue that Mitch McConnell's waiting until his friends in the alcohol and tobacco industry give him the green light to legalize, and they're fully prepared to take over the industry. So all accusations and opinions, right? But right. I mean, we need better leadership, is what you brought up. And if we have term limits, and if people understood the duty and service and honor of serving in government at the bequest and for the people, would be great. But we've created career politicians that are on the grift and serving their own interests and those of their cronies instead of the interests of the people. And that is not a democracy.
Right. And I worry about that. I really do.
I worry about it every night. And listen, we got a midterm coming up. Some people see a big, red sweep, but again, opinion and in the future. And there's certainly, plenty of people who could, plausibly argue that Donald Trump comes back as the next Republican candidate, and obviously has, very clearly tried to undermine our election system in the past election, and is going to try to do that prior to and once he becomes president, right? I mean, people let you know exactly who they are right away.
Right.
We know who he is.
Right. And he may be facing some serious accusations in his state of New York, because there's definitely a hunt going on to find something. And I don't think it's actually, they don't have to look very hard, to be honest.
But if you talk to people that are pro-Trump, and you say, how likely is your opinion going to change based on new information? They'll tell you zero.
You're right.
And if you're on the other side, and people, you ask somebody saying, you hate Donald Trump, whatever, how much likely is your opinion going to change based on new information? It's going to be a zero. And what we've done is we've wedged ourselves into a zero-sum game of neither side's going to budge, and it's just going to further, create that divide, because you come in and if there are charges brought against him for criminal behavior in a very defined law system, it's going to be politicized that this is a witch hunt, that he's being framed, and it's going to further entrench the right. And it's bizarre, his control over people that we thought were better men and women in the Republican Party. We need more Liz Cheneys, if anything, in this world, and John McCain's, God rest his soul.
I'll agree with both of those things. And I am a little encouraged that at the state level, you're starting to see the Republicans actually initiate legalization at the state level. And that there seems to be, that's happening a little bit in Ohio, Pennsylvania, even New Hampshire. I'm starting to see that. So I'm a little encouraged with that, because, I'm really a one issue guy now, George. I'm sorry, but I am, just how I feel.
All right, let's right here. You heard it here, folks. Jimmy and I are going to start the Cannabis Party. Jimmy will be running for president. I'll be serving as his Secretary of the Interior. Make sure that we're growing some really good weed in the United States.
And by the way, Pat Paulson did this. Okay, I just want to say, right? He was an old comedian from the 60s. He tried to run for president against the Nixons and the whomever was running in the 60s and 70s there. I was a George McGovern fan. Okay, so you know where I stood. And again, I'm not going to deny it, but I do hate all career politicians. They talk out of two sides of their mouths. By the way, so do sports talk show hosts. I just want to say, all right, it is a skill. It is a skill. Okay, you can do that. You can look at both sides of the game and analyze it and come up with a winner either time.
But don't we deserve better people that are leading our country than people that are be compared to a spinmeister on a sports radio show?
100%. But I'd like, and it goes back to your opinion about term limits. What I'd really like to see is our Senate look like our nation. And it doesn't. It just doesn't. They don't represent the people of the cities, of the evolving economies that we're starting to see in this country, and that bothers me. It does. They're supposed to be representative of the people, and that's where the disconnect is.
We could get Bernie back in office, and you could be his doppelganger.
I've certainly. By the way, that is not the first time at the CWCB. I'm at a bar. I'm at a bar. Okay. And a guy comes up to me thinking I'm Bernie Sanders. I mean, really? I mean, I'm 64. I'm not that old. All right.
I'm going to have you speak at our conference. I'm going to bill you out as Bernie Sanders.
You know what?
We'll get you the mittens and we'll get you a chair so you can kind of sit in the Chairman Sanders pose.
I'll bring my own director's chair. George Jage, you have been a joy to talk to today, and I want to thank you for taking the amount of time that you did, because I know how busy you are.
Thank you.
All right, and that'll wrap it up here for another edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. And a reminder to like, share, and subscribe. And this is how I end all of my shows. And if anybody's never seen me do an interview or newscast or whatever I do these days, it's a whole new world of weed. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual, not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.